The alien fleet moved quietly through the darkness of space. It was a group of ships, each one shining faintly in the light of distant stars. These ships were not like the ones humans had ever built. They were sleek and sharp, their surfaces covered with strange patterns that seemed to shift when looked at for too long. On the largest ship, a tall figure stood on the bridge, staring out at the endless void. Captain Loran Vex was his name, and he was known for being both clever and ruthless. His people had traveled across many star systems, conquering others who dared to stand in their way. But today, something felt different. Loran's eyes narrowed as he studied the readings on the holographic display before him. The screen showed a faint signal coming from a nearby star system. At first, it had been easy to ignore, just another blip of noise in the vastness of space, but then the signal grew stronger, clearer. It wasn't random static or the natural hum of cosmic radiation. This was something else entirely, something artificial. "Kale!" Loran called out, his voice low but firm. A shorter figure stepped forward, his skin pale and his movements quick. Kale was the science officer of the fleet, always eager to analyze anything new they encountered. "What do you make of this?" Loran asked, pointing at the blinking symbol on the display. Kale leaned closer, his fingers dancing over the controls. He adjusted the sensors, fine-tuning them to get a better reading. After a moment, he straightened up, his expression unreadable. "It's unusual," he admitted. "The signal matches no known frequency used by any of the species we've encountered before." Loran frowned. That was troubling. Over the years, his people had come across dozens of civilizations, some advanced, others primitive. Each one had its own way of communicating, its own technology. But this was completely foreign. "Could it be a trap?" he asked, glancing at Kale. "It's possible," Kale replied hesitantly. "But if it is, it's a very sophisticated one. Whoever sent this signal knows how to mask their presence while still making sure we notice them." Loran didn't like the sound of that. Traps meant danger, and danger meant risking his fleet and his reputation. Still, curiosity gnawed at him. If this truly was a new species, it could mean untold riches, resources, or even knowledge that would give his people an edge over their rivals. And if it turned out to be hostile, well, his fleet was more than capable of handling itself. "Set a course for the source of the signal," Loran ordered finally. "But keep our weapons ready. I want every ship scanning for threats." As the fleet changed direction, moving toward the mysterious signal, another drama was unfolding far away in the Sol system. Back on Earth, Commander Rachel Hayes sat in her office aboard the Invincible, humanity's most powerful warship. She was a woman in her late 30s, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes that missed nothing. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight bun, giving her an air of authority that matched her rank perfectly. Rachel had risen through the ranks quickly, earning respect not just for her tactical brilliance, but also for her calm under pressure. Now, as she stared at the latest intelligence report on her desk, she felt a knot forming in her stomach. The report confirmed what her team had suspected. An unknown fleet was approaching Earth. Its size and trajectory suggested it wasn't here for friendly visits. She picked up the communicator on her desk and pressed a button. "Lieutenant Cole, report to my office immediately." Moments later, the door slid open and Daniel Cole entered. He was younger than Rachel, with sandy blonde hair and a lean build. Though less experienced, he was sharp-witted and loyal, qualities Rachel valued highly. "You wanted to see me, Commander?" he asked, standing at attention. "Yes," Rachel said, gesturing for him to sit. Once he did, she handed him the report. "We've detected an unidentified fleet heading toward us. Long-range scans suggest they're armed and organized. What are your thoughts?" Daniel scanned the document, his brow furrowing. "If they're hostile, we'll be outnumbered. Even with the Invincible's capabilities, taking on an entire fleet won't be easy." Rachel nodded. She appreciated his honesty, even if it wasn't what she wanted to hear. I agree, but retreating isn't an option either. Earth depends on us to protect it. She paused, leaning back in her chair. Prepare the crew for battle. Run drills, check all systems, and make sure everyone is ready. We don't know what we're dealing with yet, but I want us prepared for anything. Aye, Commander, Daniel replied, standing up. As he left the room, Rachel turned her gaze to the viewport behind her desk. Outside, the Earth hung in the distance, a blue and green jewel suspended against the blackness of space. She felt a surge of determination. Whatever came their way, she wouldn't let her planet down. Meanwhile, aboard the alien fleet, tension continued to build. The closer they got to the signal's origin, the more uneasy Captain Loran became. His officers whispered among themselves, speculating about what awaited them. Some thought it might be a derelict ship, abandoned eons ago. Others believed it could be a trap set by a rival faction trying to lure them into a fight. But none of them expected what happened next. Suddenly, the main view screen flickered to life, displaying a massive object drifting in the distance. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The ship, if it could even be called that, was enormous, its shape angular and imposing. Its surface shimmered with an otherworldly glow, and faint pulses of energy rippled along its hull. It looked like a weapon, a machine built solely for destruction. "What is that?" Loran demanded, his voice rising slightly despite his efforts. To stay composed, Cale hurried to analyze the readings. "It's incredible," he murmured, awestruck. "Their technology is far beyond ours. Those energy signatures, they're shielding systems, but on a scale I've never encountered." For the first time in his career, Loran felt a pang of fear. This wasn't just another civilization to conquer. This was something else entirely. Something dangerous. Back on the Invincible, alarms began to blare as the alien fleet appeared, on their scanners. Rachel sprang into action, issuing orders with precision. "All hands to battle stations, shields up, weapons online. Let's show them why humanity doesn't back down." As the two forces drew nearer, neither side knew what the future held. For the aliens, it was a moment of awe mixed with terror. For humanity, it was a test of strength and resolve. And as the Invincible loomed larger in the alien fleet's viewports, one thing became clear. This encounter would change everything, for both sides. The alien fleet hovered in silence, its ships clustered together like frightened animals. Captain Loran Vex gripped the railing of his bridge, his knuckles turning white as he stared at the monstrous human warship on the view screen. The Invincible loomed ahead, its sheer size dwarfing even his largest vessels. Its surface shimmered faintly with energy shields, and its angular design seemed almost predatory, as if it were daring them to make a move. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Cale, the science officer, broke the silence. "Captain," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "their technology is beyond anything we've encountered. Those shields, they're not just defensive. They're adaptive. Every time we scan them, they adjust." Loran shot him a sharp look. "Adaptive?" he repeated, his tone sharp. "You mean they can counter our attacks before we even launch them?" Cale hesitated but nodded. "It's possible. Their systems are far more advanced than ours. We're outmatched." The words hit Loran like a punch to the gut. Outmatched. That wasn't a word he was used to hearing. His fleet had conquered countless civilizations, their weapons and tactics always proving superior. But this was different. This wasn't just another species to dominate. It was something entirely new, something terrifying, on board the Invincible. Commander Rachel Hayes stood tall on her bridge, her eyes fixed on the alien fleet through the massive viewport. Her crew moved efficiently around her, preparing for whatever might come next. She had faced dangerous situations before, but this felt different. These aliens weren't just raiders or scavengers. Their ships were sleek, their formation precise. They were organized, disciplined, and likely very dangerous. "Commander," Lieutenant Daniel Cole said, stepping up beside her, "they're not moving. They're just sitting there." Rachel nodded, her expression unreadable. "They're scared," she said simply. "Good. Let them be scared." Daniel glanced at her, surprised. "You think they'll back down?" "I don't know," Rachel admitted. "But fear is a powerful weapon. If they're smart, they'll realize they're out of their depth here." She turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel. Let's see if they're willing to talk." The officer nodded and began adjusting the controls. Moments later, a distorted voice crackled over the speakers. It was deep and guttural, the language incomprehensible. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Translate," she ordered. The translation software kicked in, and the alien's words became clear. "We are the Vraxen. You have entered our territory. Identify yourselves." Rachel stepped closer to the microphone. "This is Commander Rachel Hayes of the United Earth Space Force. You have entered restricted space. Withdraw now or face the consequences." Her voice was calm but carried an unmistakable edge of authority. The bridge fell silent as everyone waited for the alien's response. On the view screen, the alien fleet remained motionless, their ships glowing faintly against the blackness of space. Back on the alien flagship, Captain Loran listened to the human commander's words with growing unease. He turned to Kale. "Did you hear that? Restricted space. They act like they own this sector." "They might," Kale replied quietly. "Their technology suggests they're capable of defending it." Loran clenched his fists. He hated feeling powerless. But what choice did he have? Attacking blindly would only lead to disaster. Still, he couldn't let his people see him as weak. "Send a message," he ordered. "Tell them we seek knowledge, not conflict." As the message was transmitted, tension continued to mount on both sides. On Earth, news of the standoff spread quickly. Civilians gathered around screens in homes and public spaces, watching live feeds from the Invincible. Analysts debated whether humanity would emerge victorious, while others worried about the potential cost of such a confrontation. Among those watching was Emily Carter, a young astrophysicist, who worked closely with Rachel's team. She sat in her lab, staring at the data streaming in from the Invincible. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together everything she knew about the aliens. Their ships emitted strange energy signatures, unlike anything she'd studied before. Their movements suggested caution, but also curiosity. Emily leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. She had always dreamed of making first contact with an alien species, but never like this. Never under the shadow of war. Still, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this encounter could lead to something greater than violence. Back on the Invincible, the alien response finally came through. "We are explorers," the distorted voice said. "We seek understanding, not destruction." Rachel crossed her arms, studying the view screen thoughtfully. "Understanding," she repeated softly. She glanced at Daniel. "What do you think?" "It could be a trick," Daniel warned. "They might be buying time to regroup." "Maybe," Rachel conceded. "But we won't know unless we try." She turned back to the microphone. "If you truly seek understanding, then prove it. Stand down your weapons and prepare for communication." The aliens hesitated, their ships remaining still. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, their leader responded. "We will comply, but know this. We are not without strength." Rachel allowed herself a small smile. "Neither are we." As the alien fleet powered down its weapons, the atmosphere on the Invincible shifted. The crew exchanged cautious glances, some relieved, others still wary. Rachel addressed them directly. "Good work, everyone, but stay alert. This isn't over yet." Meanwhile, aboard the alien flagship, Captain Loran paced the bridge, his mind racing. He had never backed down from a fight before, but this situation was unlike any he had faced. These humans were clearly formidable, their technology unmatched. Yet there was something else, a sense of restraint, of measured power. They hadn't attacked immediately, despite having the advantage. "Why? They're testing us," Kyle said, suddenly interrupting Loran's thoughts. "They want to see how we react." Loran stopped pacing and looked at him. "Testing us for what?" "For weakness," Kyle replied. "For trust. Maybe both." Loran frowned. Trust was a foreign concept to him. In his experience, strength was the only currency that mattered. But these humans, they were different. They had shown mercy when they could have struck. Perhaps that was a sign of wisdom, or perhaps it was a trap. "What do we do now?" Kyle asked cautiously. Loran took a deep breath. "We wait, and we learn." Back on Earth, Emily watched the unfolding events with growing fascination. She couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was historic, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. First contact had always been a dream, a distant possibility. Now, it was happening right before her eyes. She picked up her communicator and dialed Rachel's line. When the commander answered, Emily wasted no time. "Commander, I think we should consider sending a diplomatic envoy. If they're genuinely interested in understanding us, we need to show them we're willing to meet them halfway." Rachel listened carefully, considering the suggestion. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "But for now, we focus on keeping the peace. One step at a time." As the hours passed, the standoff continued. Neither side made a move, each waiting for the other to break the stalemate. On the Invincible, Rachel stood by the viewport, watching the alien ships. She couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and responsibility. Humanity had taken its first step onto the galactic stage, and the world was watching. For the aliens, the experience was equally profound. Captain Loran stared at the human warship, his mind grappling with the implications of what he had seen. They were not alone in the universe anymore, and neither were they the strongest. Far away, in the quiet corners of space, stars twinkled, like silent witnesses to the drama unfolding. The universe was vast and mysterious, filled with wonders and dangers alike. But for now, two very different species had found themselves face to face, unsure of what the future held, but united, for the moment by a shared sense of awe and uncertainty. The standoff between the alien fleet and the Invincible stretched on, each side waiting for the other to make the next move. Tension filled the air, thick and unyielding, like a storm cloud refusing to break. On board the human warship, Commander, Rachel Hayes walked the bridge with deliberate steps, her eyes scanning every screen and display. Her crew worked tirelessly, monitoring the aliens' movements and ensuring their own systems were ready for anything. The silence was heavy, broken only by the soft hum of machinery and the occasional murmur of voices. Rachel stopped near Lieutenant Daniel Cole, who stood by the tactical console. "Anything new?" she asked quietly, her tone calm but firm. Daniel shook his head. "No changes. Their weapons are still powered down, but their shields are active. They're holding position." Rachel nodded. She had expected as much. These aliens, whoever they were, weren't acting like typical invaders. They hadn't attacked, hadn't made any aggressive moves since standing down their weapons. It was strange, almost unsettling. Were they truly explorers, as they claimed? Or was this some kind of elaborate ruse? "They're testing us," Rachel said aloud, more to herself than to Daniel. "They want to see how far we'll go, how much patience we have." Daniel frowned. "You think they're stalling?" "Maybe. Or maybe they're just as confused as we are. Rachel turned back toward the viewport where the alien ships hung motionless in the void. Either way, we can't let our guard down. On the alien flagship, Captain Loran Vex paced the length of his bridge, his thoughts racing. He couldn't shake the image of the Invincible. Its massive frame, its glowing shields, the sheer power it radiated. It wasn't just a ship, it was a statement. These humans were telling him without words that they were not to be trifled with, and yet they hadn't fired a single shot. Why? Kale, the science officer, approached cautiously. "Captain," he began, his voice low, "their energy output is stable. They're not preparing an attack." Loran stopped pacing and glared at him. "That doesn't mean they won't strike if provoked." "No," Kale agreed quickly, "but it does suggest they're giving us a chance. A warning, perhaps." Warning," Loran repeated bitterly. He crossed his arms, his expression dark. "And what happens if we don't heed it? Do they destroy us, humiliate us in front of our own fleet?" Kyle hesitated, unsure how to respond. He knew his captain was struggling, not just with the situation, but with his pride. Loran had always prided himself on being a conqueror, a leader who never backed down. But now, faced with an opponent he couldn't overpower, he was forced to reconsider everything he thought he knew. "We can't fight them," Kyle said finally. "Not here, not now. We need to find another way." Loran's jaw tightened. "Another way? What do you propose? Should I kneel before them and beg for mercy?" "No," Kyle replied firmly. "But we can learn from them. Study their technology, their tactics. If we act wisely, this could be an opportunity instead of a defeat." Loran didn't answer. He turned away, staring out at the view screen. The human warship loomed large, its presence impossible to ignore. For the first time in his life, he felt small, vulnerable. It was a feeling he hated, but one he couldn't deny. Back on the Invincible, Rachel decided it was time to push the situation forward. Standing idle wasn't getting them anywhere, and she needed answers. She signaled for her communications officer. "Send another message," she ordered. "Tell them we're willing to negotiate, but only if they show genuine intent." The message was transmitted, and moments later, a response came through. The distorted alien voice crackled over the speakers. "We seek understanding. We will meet your terms." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Understanding," she muttered under her breath. She glanced at Daniel. "Let's see if they mean it." She stepped closer to the microphone. "If you're sincere, send one of your ships to dock with ours. We'll arrange a meeting. But know this, if you try anything, we'll respond decisively." The aliens hesitated, their fleet remaining eerily still. Finally, after a long pause, their leader spoke again. "We accept. One ship will approach." Rachel nodded, satisfied. "Good. Prepare a docking bay. Let's see what they're made of." As the designated alien vessel detached from the fleet and moved toward the Invincible, the tension aboard both ships reached a fever pitch. On the human side, security teams were stationed throughout the corridors, their weapons ready. Engineers double-checked the airlocks and containment protocols, ensuring no surprises awaited them. Meanwhile, the alien crew prepared their envoy, selecting individuals they believed best suited for the task. On Earth, Emily Carter watched the live feed from her lab, her heart pounding with anticipation. This was it, the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries. First contact. She couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and dread. What would these aliens look like? How would they behave? Would they be hostile, curious, or something else entirely? Her communicator buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was Rachel. "Emily," the commander said, her voice steady, "we're bringing them aboard. I want you there when we meet them. Your expertise might come in handy." Emily blinked, surprised. "Me? Are you sure? You've studied their signals, their ships. You know more about them than anyone else right now. Be ready. Yes, Commander, Emily replied, her voice shaking slightly. She ended the call and took a deep breath. This was happening. In a matter of minutes, she would come, face to face with beings from another world. On the alien ship, Captain Loran addressed his chosen representatives. Remember why you're here, he said, his tone harsh but tinged with urgency. Observe. Learn. Do not provoke them. If they sense weakness, they may exploit it. The envoys nodded solemnly. Among them was Kale, who had volunteered despite the risks. He believed this encounter could change everything, for better or worse. As their ship docked with the Invincible, he felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. Fear of the unknown, hope for the future. The airlock hissed open, and the alien envoys stepped onto the human ship. They were tall and slender, their skin a pale grayish hue. Their eyes were large and luminous, reflecting the light in an almost hypnotic way. They wore simple, form-fitting suits that shimmered faintly, giving them an otherworldly appearance. Rachel stood at the head of the welcoming party, flanked by Daniel and a team of armed guards. Behind her, Emily hovered nervously, clutching a datapad filled with notes and questions. When the aliens entered, Rachel extended a hand, a gesture of peace. Welcome aboard the Invincible. I am Commander Rachel Hayes. The lead alien tilted its head, studying her curiously. After a moment, it raised a three-fingered hand and mimicked the gesture, though awkwardly. I am Kale, it said, its voice smoother now, translated clearly by the onboard systems. We come in peace. Rachel nodded, her expression neutral. Let's talk. The group moved to a conference room where a long table separated humans and aliens. The atmosphere was tense but controlled. Rachel opened the discussion. Who are you? Why are you here? Kale hesitated, then spoke carefully. We are the Vraxen. Our mission is to explore, to expand our knowledge. We did not expect to find you. Clearly, Rachel said dryly. Your fleet entering our space suggests otherwise. Kale lowered his gaze, a sign of submission, or perhaps guilt. We meant no harm. We were curious. Emily leaned forward slightly, unable to contain her curiosity. Your technology, it's impressive, but it's also aggressive. Designed for conquest, not exploration? Kale glanced at her, his luminous eyes narrowing. You judge us based on appearances. Not all who appear strong are enemies. Rachel intervened before the conversation could escalate. Fair enough, but actions speak louder than words. If you're here to learn, prove it. Show us you're willing to cooperate. Kale considered this, then nodded slowly. We will share what we know. In return, we ask the same of you. Rachel exchanged a glance with Daniel, who gave a slight nod. Turning back to Kyle, she said, Agreed, but understand this. If you betray our trust, there will be consequences. Kyle met her gaze, his expression unreadable. Understood. As the meeting continued, both sides exchanged information cautiously, each probing for weaknesses while offering tidbits of knowledge. For the humans, it was a delicate balancing act, revealing enough to build trust, but not so much as to compromise their security. For the Vraxen, it was an opportunity to learn from a species far more advanced than they had anticipated. Emily found herself fascinated by Kale. Despite his alien appearance, there was something oddly relatable about him. His curiosity mirrored her own, and his willingness to engage suggested a desire for understanding rather than conflict. Still, she reminded herself not to let her guard down. Trust was earned, not given freely. By the end of the session, a tentative agreement had been reached. The Vraxen would withdraw their fleet, but leave behind a small contingent to continue negotiations. In return, humanity would allow limited access to their technology under strict supervision. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start, as the aliens prepared to leave. Kale approached Rachel one last time. "Commander," he said, his voice soft. "Thank you for giving us this chance." Rachel studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Don't waste it." With that, the Vraxin envoys returned to their ship, leaving the humans to process what had just happened. For Rachel, it was a victory, not through force, but through restraint. For Evan, in the vastness. The days following the initial meeting between humanity and the Vraxin were tense but productive. On board the Invincible, Commander Rachel Hayes oversaw a series of negotiations with the alien contingent that had remained behind. Each session was carefully planned, with both sides exchanging information cautiously. The humans shared basic technological insights, enough to show goodwill but not enough to compromise their defenses. In return, the Vraxin provided glimpses into their own advancements, though much of it seemed rudimentary compared to what the Invincible could achieve. Emily Carter played a key role in these discussions. Her expertise in astrophysics allowed her to ask probing questions about the Vraxin's energy systems and propulsion methods. She quickly realized that while the aliens' technology appeared sleek and advanced on the surface, it lacked the precision and efficiency of human engineering. Still, there were elements worth studying, particularly their ability to manipulate gravitational fields in ways Earth's scientists had only theorized. For Emily, the experience was both exhilarating and exhausting. Every interaction with the Vraxin felt like walking a tightrope. She wanted to believe they were sincere, but years of science fiction had taught her to be wary of first impressions. Kale, the lead envoy, seemed genuine in his curiosity, but she couldn't ignore the fact that he represented a species known for conquest. Trust, she reminded herself, would take time. On the alien side, Kale faced similar challenges. He reported back to Captain Loran regularly, relaying everything he learned about humanity. His descriptions painted a picture of a species that was intelligent, resourceful, and fiercely protective of its territory. "They are stronger than us," Kale admitted during one encrypted transmission. "But they also value restraint. Their commander, Rachel, is cunning. She knows how to use fear without resorting to violence." Loran listened intently, his expression unreadable. "Fear is a weapon," he said finally. "And if they can wield it so effectively, we must learn to do the same." Kyle hesitated. "Or perhaps we should focus on learning from them instead of trying to match them." Loran's eyes narrowed. "Learning has its limits. Eventually, strength will decide who rules the stars." Despite their differences, both sides continued to work toward understanding. Over time, small breakthroughs began to emerge. The humans discovered that the Vraxin communicated through a combination of sound waves and subtle body movements, a language far more nuanced than their translators initially revealed. Meanwhile, the Vraxin marveled at humanity's adaptability, particularly their ability to innovate under pressure. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, Emily found herself alone in the conference room with Kale. The alien sat quietly, his large eyes fixed on the table as if deep in thought. Curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to break the silence. "Kyle," she began hesitantly, "why did your people come here?" Kyle looked up, his gaze steady. "To explore," he replied simply. "We have traveled across many star systems, seeking knowledge, but we have also made mistakes. Our thirst for power has led us to conquer others when we should have sought peace." Emily nodded slowly. "That sounds familiar. Humans have done terrible things too. In our past, I mean. Wars, destruction. It's part of why we're so careful. Now." Kale tilted his head, intrigued. "You are cautious because of your history?" "Yes," Emily said. "We've learned that unchecked ambition can destroy civilizations. That's why we built ships like the Invincible, not just to fight, but to protect what matters." Kale studied her for a moment, then spoke softly. "Perhaps your caution is your greatest strength. My people We are proud, quick to act, sometimes too quick. Emily smiled faintly. Maybe we can teach each other something. As the negotiations progressed, tensions aboard the Invincible began to ease. The crew grew accustomed to the presence of the Vraxin envoys, and even Lieutenant Daniel Cole, who had been skeptical from the start, began to see them as less of a threat and more of an opportunity. "If we play this right," he told Rachel, during one briefing, "we might actually turn them into allies." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "Allies or not, they're still unpredictable. We need to stay sharp." Her caution proved justified when an unexpected incident nearly derailed the talks. During a routine exchange of data, one of the junior Vraxin envoys accidentally triggered a minor malfunction in the ship's communication system. Though harmless, the event caused panic among the human crew, who feared it might be a deliberate attempt to sabotage their systems. Rachel acted swiftly, calling an emergency meeting with Kale. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice firm but controlled. Kyle raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "It was an accident, Commander. One of my team members made an error. No harm was intended." Rachel stared at him, searching for any sign of deception. Finally, she sighed. "Accidents happen. But if this happens again, I won't be so forgiving." Kale bowed his head slightly. "Understood. It will not happen again." Though the incident passed without further consequences, it served as a reminder of how fragile the situation truly was. Both sides knew that one wrong move could shatter the fragile trust they had built. Back on Earth, the public reaction to the encounter was mixed. Some celebrated the possibility of peaceful contact with an alien species, hailing it as a historic milestone. Others voiced concerns, fearing that sharing knowledge with the Vraxin could make humanity vulnerable. Politicians debated the merits of continuing the negotiations, while scientists urged caution, emphasizing the need for transparency. Among those watching closely was Emily's mentor, Dr. Alan Pierce, a renowned physicist who had spent decades studying extraterrestrial phenomena. When Emily called him to share updates, he listened intently before offering advice. "This is uncharted territory," he said. "Every decision you make sets a precedent. Be careful, Emily. The choices you make now could shape the future of interstellar relations." Emily took his words to heart. She knew the weight of responsibility resting on her shoulders and on Rachel's. This wasn't just about two species meeting. It was about laying the foundation for coexistence in a galaxy full of unknowns. As the days turned into weeks, progress became more tangible. The Vraxin shared details about their home system, revealing that their civilization was older than humanity's, but plagued by internal conflicts. They spoke of rival factions vying for control, of resources dwindling as their population expanded. It was a sobering reminder that no society was immune to struggle. In return, humanity offered glimpses into its own struggles and triumphs. Through carefully curated videos and presentations, the Vraxin learned about Earth's diverse cultures, its history of conflict and cooperation, and its dreams of reaching beyond the stars. Kale, in particular, seemed captivated by stories of humanity's resilience, the way people came together in times of crisis to rebuild and grow stronger. "These stories," Kale said during one session, "they give me hope. Perhaps my people can change too." Rachel watched the exchange silently, her expression thoughtful. For all her skepticism, she couldn't deny that something remarkable was happening. These weren't just negotiations, they were the beginnings of mutual understanding. And though she remained vigilant, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of optimism. Finally, after weeks of deliberation, both sides reached a formal agreement. The Vraxin would withdraw their fleet entirely, leaving behind a small diplomatic team to continue fostering relations. In exchange, humanity would grant limited access to certain technologies, provided they were used solely for peaceful purposes. Both parties agreed to establish regular communication channels, ensuring that misunderstandings could be addressed before escalating into conflict. When the final terms were signed, a digital document transmitted simultaneously to both fleets, there was a palpable sense of relief. On the Invincible, Rachel addressed her crew. Today we took a step forward, not just for humanity, but for the galaxy. This isn't the end of our journey, but it's a good start. Her words were met with applause, though tempered by the knowledge that challenges lay ahead. For Emily, the moment was bittersweet. She had grown fond of Kale and the other envoys, yet she knew their departure marked the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with uncertainty. As the remaining Vraxen prepared to leave, Kale approached Emily one last time. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft, "for believing in us, for giving us a chance." Emily smiled, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Thank you for trusting us. Let's hope this is just the beginning." With that, the Vraxen boarded their ship and departed, leaving the Invincible to begin its journey back to Earth. As the massive warship turned toward home, Rachel stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars. She felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. Humanity had taken its first step onto the galactic stage, and the world watched with bated breath, wondering what tomorrow might bring. Far away, Captain Loran watched the human ship disappear from view. He felt a strange mix of emotions: fear, respect, and a glimmer of hope. The encounter had changed him, forcing him to confront truths he had long ignored. Perhaps, he thought, there was another way to rule the stars, not through conquest, but through cooperation. In the quiet vastness of space, the universe seemed they bore silent witness to a new era, one where understanding. The Invincible drifted silently through the void, its massive frame casting a long shadow against the backdrop of stars. Commander Rachel Hayes stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the viewport, as Earth grew larger in the distance. The journey home had been quiet, almost eerily so, but Rachel knew better than to let her guard down. The encounter with the Vraxen had left an indelible mark, not just on her crew, but on humanity itself. For the first time in history, humans had faced an alien species and walked away not with weapons blazing, but with a fragile bond forged in the crucible of mutual fear and respect. Back on Earth, anticipation was palpable. News outlets broadcast non-stop coverage of the Invincible's return, speculating about what the encounter meant for humanity's future. Scientists debated the implications of sharing technology with the Vraxen, while politicians argued over whether the agreement went too far or not far enough. Civilians gathered in public squares, staring up at the sky as if expecting to see the alien fleet appear once more. It was a moment that united the world in a way few events ever could, a shared sense of wonder and uncertainty. Emily Carter sat in her lab, surrounded by notes and data collected during the negotiations. She hadn't slept much since returning to Earth, her mind racing with possibilities. The Vraxen were unlike anything she had imagined, both more dangerous and more complex than science fiction had prepared her for. Their technology hinted at untapped potential. Their culture spoke of centuries of struggle, and their willingness to negotiate suggested a desire for change. But questions lingered. Could they truly be trusted? Would this tentative peace hold? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. "Come in," she called out, turning to see Rachel enter. The commander looked tired but resolute, her sharp features softened slightly by the weight of recent events. "How are you holding up?" Rachel asked, pulling up a chair beside Emily. "I'm fine," Emily replied, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. "Just trying to make sense of everything." Rachel nodded knowingly. "You're not alone. Everyone's processing this in their own way. But I wanted to talk to you about something. Emily raised an eyebrow. About what? The future, Rachel said simply. We've taken the first step, but it's up to us to decide where we go from here, and I think you have a role to play. Emily blinked, caught off guard. Me? What do you mean? You've seen them up close, Rachel explained. You understand their motivations, their fears. If we're going to build a lasting relationship with the Vraxen, we'll need people like you. People who can bridge the gap between us. Emily hesitated, her mind racing. She had always dreamed of being part of something bigger. But the idea of representing humanity in interstellar diplomacy felt overwhelming. I don't know if I'm ready for that, she admitted. No one is, Rachel said with a faint smile. But sometimes you don't get a choice. You step up because it's the right thing to do. Emily looked down at her hands, considering the commander's words. She thought about Kyle, about the curiosity in his luminous eyes and the sincerity in his voice. He had trusted her, even when trust seemed impossible. Could she do the same? I'll think about it, she said finally. That's all I ask, Rachel replied, standing up. In the meantime, get some rest. You've earned it. As Rachel left the room, Emily leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges and unknowns, but deep down she felt a spark of excitement. This wasn't just about her. It was about shaping a future where humanity wasn't alone in the universe. Far away, aboard the Vraxen flagship, Captain Loran Vex paced the length of his quarters, his mind heavy with thoughts of the encounter. His crew had returned safely, their mission accomplished, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The humans had shown him a different path, one of restraint and cooperation, but it was a path he wasn't. Sure, his people were ready to walk. Kale entered the room without knocking, sensing his captain's turmoil. You're troubled, he observed quietly. Loran stopped pacing and turned to face him. Troubled doesn't begin to describe it, he admitted. We underestimated them, Kyle. They could have destroyed us, but they didn't. Why? Because they value peace, Kyle replied, or perhaps because they saw an opportunity to teach us instead of fight us. Loran shook his head. Peace is a luxury for the strong. The weak cling to it out of necessity. And yet they chose not to crush us, Kale countered. Doesn't that say something? It says they're playing a longer game, Loran muttered. But I still don't know the rules. Kale stepped closer, his expression earnest. Maybe it's time we learned them. Maybe it's time we stopped relying on strength alone and started valuing wisdom. Loran studied him for a moment, then sighed. You've changed, Kale. This encounter has changed you. As it should, Kale said firmly. If we don't change, we'll keep repeating the same mistakes. Is that what you want for our people? Loran didn't answer immediately. He turned away, gazing out at the stars. The universe was vast, full of dangers and opportunities alike. Perhaps Kale was right. Perhaps the old ways, the ways of conquest and domination, were no longer enough. But change wouldn't come easily, not for a species accustomed to ruling. Through force. What do you propose? Loran asked finally. We start small, Kale replied. We honor the agreement we made with the humans. We learn from them, adapt to their methods, and maybe, over time, we find a new way to thrive. Loran nodded slowly. It won't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is, Kyle said. Months passed, and the tentative alliance between humanity and the Vraxen began to take shape. Communication channels remained open, with regular exchanges of information and ideas. Scientists from both sides collaborated on joint projects, exploring ways to combine their respective technologies. Diplomats worked tirelessly to address misunderstandings and prevent conflicts before they escalated. Emily threw herself into her new role, traveling between Earth and the Vraxan diplomatic outpost to facilitate discussions. She found the work challenging but rewarding, her interactions with Kyle growing more comfortable with each passing day. Together, they navigated cultural differences, language barriers, and the occasional flare-up of mistrust. Slowly but surely, a foundation of mutual respect began to form. For Rachel, the success of the mission brought a sense of fulfillment she hadn't expected. The Invincible remained humanity's guardian, patrolling the edges of known space and standing ready to defend Earth if needed. But its role had expanded beyond warfare. It was now a symbol of hope, proof that strength didn't have to mean destruction. On Earth, the public's fascination with the Vraxan continued to grow. Schools introduced lessons on interstellar diplomacy. Museums hosted exhibits showcasing alien artifacts, though carefully curated, and artists drew inspiration from the encounter. Humanity's place in the cosmos had shifted forever, and while fear lingered, so did optimism. One evening, Emily stood on a balcony overlooking the city, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. Cale joined her, his presence calm and reassuring. "Do you think we'll succeed?" he asked softly. Emily smiled, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I don't know, but I believe we can try." Kyle nodded, his luminous eyes reflecting the fading light. That's all anyone can ask for. As night fell, the stars emerged, countless pinpricks of light scattered across the heavens. Somewhere among them, other civilizations waited, their stories untold, their futures unwritten. Humanity had taken its first step onto the galactic stage, and though the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, it was a journey worth taking. For the first time in history, the universe felt smaller and infinitely more hopeful. The months following the initial agreement between humanity and the Vraxan were a delicate balancing act. Both sides worked hard to maintain the fragile peace they had established, but it wasn't without its challenges. Misunderstandings arose, cultural differences caused friction, and the lingering mistrust from years of conflict on both sides made progress slow. Yet despite these obstacles, the bond between the two species continued to grow stronger. Emily Carter became a central figure in this process. Her role as a liaison between humanity and the Vraxan kept her constantly busy, shuttling back and forth between Earth and the alien outpost stationed near the edge of human-controlled space. She spent long hours in meetings, translating not just language but intent, ensuring that neither side misinterpreted the other's actions. It was exhausting work, but Emily found herself energized by the challenge. Every small success felt like a step towards something greater, a future where cooperation replaced fear. Kyle remained her counterpart on the Vraxan side, his calm demeanor and sharp intellect making him an ideal partner for Emily. Over time, their working relationship evolved into something deeper, though neither of them dared to put a name to it. They shared late-night conversations about their respective worlds, comparing philosophies, histories, and hopes for the future. Cale often spoke of the divisions within Vraxan society, how factions vied for power, and how difficult it was to unite his people under a single vision. Emily listened intently, offering insights from humanity's own struggles with unity and progress. "You're lucky," Cale said one evening during one of their talks. "Your species has learned to work together, even when it's hard." Emily smiled faintly. "It's not always easy. We still argue, still fight among ourselves. But we've realized that survival depends on cooperation. Maybe your people will come to see that too." Cale nodded thoughtfully, his luminous eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lights around them. "I hope so." Meanwhile, Commander Rachel Hayes continued to oversee operations aboard the Invincible. Though the immediate threat of war had passed, she remained vigilant, knowing that peace was never guaranteed. The ship patrolled the borders of human space, its presence serving as both a deterrent and a reassurance. Rachel also took on a new responsibility, advising Earth's leaders on interstellar diplomacy. Her experience with the Vraxen gave her unique insight into how humanity could navigate the complexities of first contact. Trust is earned, not given, Rachel reminded government officials during one briefing. Every decision we make sets a precedent. If we want the Vraxen and any other species we meet to see us as equals, we have to act like it. Her words resonated, though not everyone agreed with her cautious approach. Some argued that humanity should assert dominance, using its technological advantage to secure favorable terms in negotiations. Others believed that sharing too much knowledge with the Vraxen posed a risk to Earth's security. Rachel listened to these arguments patiently, but she never wavered in her stance. "We're stronger together than apart," she told Lieutenant Daniel Cole one day as they reviewed patrol routes. "If we push too hard, we'll lose what we've gained, and if we hold back too much, we'll never move forward." Daniel nodded, though he still harbored doubts. "Do you think they'll honor the agreement, or are they just waiting for an opportunity to strike?" "I don't know," Rachel admitted. "But I do know that fear only breeds more fear. If we want to break the cycle, we have to take risks." On board the Vraxen flagship, Captain Loran Vex faced growing pressure from his own ranks. While some members of his fleet supported the alliance with humanity, others viewed it as a sign of weakness. Dissent simmered beneath the surface, fueled by those who believed the Vraxen should reclaim their reputation as conquerors rather than negotiators. Loran called a meeting of his senior officers to address the unrest. "We are at a crossroads," he began, his voice firm but measured. "The humans have shown us a different path, one of cooperation instead of conflict, but change is never easy." One officer, a burly figure named Tren, stepped forward. "Change is unnecessary," he growled. "Our strength lies in our ability to dominate. Why should we bow to them?" "We're not bowing," Loran countered sharply. "We're learning. The humans are stronger than us, whether we like it or not. Fighting them would be suicide." Tren sneered. "Then let them attack first. Let them show their true colors." Kyle intervened before Loran could respond. "Attacking us won't prove anything. What matters is how we choose to move forward. Do we cling to the past, or do we embrace the future?" The room fell silent as the officers considered his words. Loran studied their faces, searching for signs of agreement or defiance. Finally, he spoke again. "This isn't about pride. It's about survival. If we can learn from the humans, we become stronger. If we reject them, we risk everything." Though not everyone was convinced, the dissent quieted for now. Loran knew the battle for unity was far from over, but he also knew that leadership required perseverance. Back on Earth, public opinion about the Vraxen remained divided. Some celebrated the partnership as a historic milestone, while others feared it would lead to disaster. Protests erupted in major cities, with demonstrators holding signs that read, "Protect Earth" and "No alien deals." Politicians scrambled to address the concerns, promising transparency and accountability in all dealings with the Vraxen. Amid the chaos, Emily found herself thrust into the spotlight. Reporters hounded her for interviews, eager to hear firsthand accounts of life among the aliens. At first, she avoided the media, focusing instead on her work. But Rachel encouraged her to speak out, believing that transparency could ease public fears. "You're the face of this mission," Rachel told her. "People need to see that there's nothing to be afraid of." Reluctantly, Emily agreed to give a televised interview. Sitting in front of cameras, she spoke candidly about her experiences with the Vraxen, emphasizing their curiosity and willingness to cooperate. "They're not so different from us," she said. "They make mistakes, just like we do. But they want to learn, to grow. Isn't that worth giving them a chance?" Her words struck a chord with viewers, sparking renewed interest in the alliance. Schools invited her to speak to students, community groups organized discussions, and social media buzzed with debates about humanity's place in the universe. For the first time, many people began to see the Vraxen not as invaders, but as partners. As the months turned into a year, the collaboration between humanity and the Vraxen yielded tangible results. Joint research projects led to breakthroughs in energy efficiency, medical technology, and space travel. Engineers combined human precision with Vraxen innovation to create hybrid systems that benefited both species. Diplomatic exchanges fostered mutual understanding, helping to dispel stereotypes and build trust. One project stood out above the rest: the development of a shared communication network. Designed to facilitate real-time dialogue across vast distances, the network allowed humans and Vraxen to stay connected no matter where they were in the galaxy. Its launch marked a turning point in their relationship, symbolizing the potential for harmony in a universe often defined by conflict. At the ceremony commemorating the network's activation, Emily stood beside Kyle, her heart swelling with pride. Representatives from both species gathered to celebrate the achievement, their laughter and applause filling the air. For a brief moment, it felt as though anything was possible. "This is just the beginning," Kyle said quietly, leaning close to Emily. She nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "Yes, and whatever comes next, we'll face it together." In the quiet corners of space, stars twinkled silently, bearing witness to the unfolding drama. Humanity had taken its first steps onto the galactic stage, navigating the complexities of diplomacy, trust, and coexistence. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but for the first time, the universe felt less daunting and infinitely more hopeful. Rachel watched the celebrations from afar, her expression thoughtful. She knew the challenges weren't over. There would always be risks, always be doubts. But she also knew that humanity had proven something vital, that strength didn't have to mean violence, and that peace was worth fighting for. As the festivities drew to a close, Emily looked up at the night sky, her mind filled with dreams of the future. Somewhere out there, among the countless stars, other civilizations waited to be discovered. And when humanity met them, it would do so not as conquerors but as explorers, seekers of knowledge and builders of bridges. For the first time in history, the cosmos felt alive with possibility. And though the journey was just beginning, it was a journey worth taking.